Why are Americans still hiding behind the maple leaf? You undoubtedly thought, "Oh, a Canadian." When you saw someone packing their rucksack with a crisp red maple leaf sewn on it. If you have ever been outside of the country, you have probably experienced this. Since the beginning of time, Canada has garnered a worldwide reputation for being one of the countries that is the kindest, most polite, and least controversial in the entire globe. However, here is where things become more complicated. There are situations when the passenger in question is not even Canadian. There are times when they are American. The act of assuming the identity of another nation is referred to as flagjacking, and it has another term. Flagjacking can be defined as the act of a citizen of the United States pretending to be a citizen of Canada when they are traveling outside of the country. A common example of this is the act of sewing a patch onto a bag, purchasing a cap with a maple leaf on it, or using a little bit of Canadian terminology when having a discussion. The motivation is not understated. This is done by Americans in order to avoid the stigma that sometimes surrounds them when they travel abroad. It's possible that they don't want to deal with trouble at customs. Perhaps they have grown weary of being subjected to lectures about the foreign policy of the United States while they are on vacation. Alternatively, it's possible that they've come to the realization that the greatest country in the world does not always receive the warmest welcome outside of its own boundaries. This situation is rife with irony. A deep-seated idea that American citizenship is a privilege that the rest of the world secretly seeks is a common manifestation of patriotism in the United States. This belief manifests itself in the form of flags flying from porches, shouts of "greatest country in the world," and other similar symbols. If this were the case, then why would a large number of Americans believe it is safer to disguise themselves as Canadians while they are traveling outside of the country? The moment they set foot in the territory of another nation, it is as if their self-assurance at home is completely wiped out. When viewed from a Canadian point of view, this behavior is unquestionably not flattering. Not because it is spectacular, but rather because it silently represents decades of establishing goodwill around the world. The Canadian flag is considered to be a source of intense pride for the Canadian people. The employment of it as a disguise by Americans gives off an air of being cheap. It is reminiscent of cosplay, as well as being offensive to many people. Imagine spending decades creating an image of benevolence, diplomacy, and peacekeeping, only to have your more powerful neighbors slip on your identity like a mask when it is opportune for them to do so. There is a wide spectrum of responses to this trend, from exasperation to amusement. The ones who are plastered head to toe in Canadian stuff are frequently imposters, according to some Canadians, who laugh it off and point out that real Canadians do not plaster maple leaves all over their clothing. A number of others are much less forgiving, and they refer to it as cultural appropriation. A number of resorts in Europe have even started training their employees to quiz guests on various aspects of Canadian culture. Whenever someone asserts that they are from Canada, but is unable to identify the city that is located on the Rideau Canal, or mispronounces the word Saskatchewan, the truth is likely to be revealed. It may sound like a joke, but the fact that firms actually make preparations for this demonstrates how popular the practice has become. In addition to that, there is an emotional component to all of this. There was a young couple whom I met at an airport lounge who were carrying a luggage tag that read Canada. Having a natural curiosity, I inquired about their origins in Canada. Upon seeing my Team Canada hat, they immediately stopped moving, as they became aware that they had been discovered. In reality, they were citizens of Oregon. Immediately after the news broke, they issued an apology and stated that they were embarrassed by the actions that their government was taking on the international stage. After that, I was presented with a decision. I might have retaliated by lashing out at them for diminishing our identity, or I could have empathized with the reality that they were merely attempting to distance themselves from something that they had no control over. Empathy was the option I went with. We ended up having a lengthy talk that was full of deep thought. On the other side, I made it a point to inform them that flag-jacking is not the appropriate method to deal with their discomfort. During another instance, I found myself in the position of becoming the target of suspicion. During the time that I was waiting to board a flight, I was wearing my Vancouver Canucks hat, and I was asked if I was actually Canadian or if I was merely an American in disguise. Squamish, Coquihalla, and Lougheed were some of the names of British Columbia locations and Vancouver landmarks that I began to rattle off in excitement. Only a native could properly pronounce these names. I was greeted with laughter and a handshake by my inquisitor, who then acknowledged that he was also from the Lower Mainland. The interaction made me laugh, but it also caused me to think deeply. Indicative of how profoundly flag-jacking has penetrated people's consciousness is the fact that Canadians themselves are checking and rechecking each other. As a result of the entire discussion, we are left with more fundamental problems of national identity and duty. Does it constitute a form of cowardice for Americans to put on the appearance of Canadians when the reputation of their own country makes the situation awkward? When the same Americans publicly declare that they are ashamed of their government, does this demonstrate empathy among them? Or is it simply unacceptable, regardless of the reason for doing so, due to the fact that a national flag should never be used as a costume? When seen from one perspective, flag-jacking might be easily dismissed as merely another online word that has been inflated into controversy. Those who are skeptical of it believe that it is exaggerated. Furthermore, it is possible that this is the reason why it is so painful when other people take credit for their identity, rather than taking responsibility for their own. In the end, flag-jacking brings up questions that are not just difficult, but also important. In what ways may one be proud of their origins and where they came from? What should you do when the reputation of your country in other countries is more of a liability than an asset? You either try to put yourself in the position of another person and hope that no one notices, or you try to cling to your identity, even if it means having conversations that are difficult for you. It is quite evident to the people of Canada that their flag is not for sale, it is not for borrowing, and it is most certainly not for hiding their flag. The response is more challenging for people who are American. Consider the following question the next time you come across a visitor in Paris or Barcelona with a maple leaf sewed into their backpack. Is this person truly Canadian, or are they just trying to pass themselves off as Canadian? First and foremost, does it make a difference? And if the roles were switched, would you ever feel the need to appear to be someone you are not, in order to make your way through the world with less difficulty? Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.